She pointed to the people behind her. These are the ones you left behind, the ones your systems forgot. But look what they built, without your armies, without your money, without your blessing. She paused, then finished. We don't want to be part of your politics, but we won't be erased. We're not going away. The room reacts. Some clapped. Some stood. Some council members looked away, ashamed. But one stood slowly. Chancellor Rhine himself. You have done something impossible, he said. You've united those no one else could. He looked at Sira and Eli. Sanctuary is not a threat. It is an example. Then, for the first time in history, the council voted to recognize Sanctuary as an independent neutral safe zone, free from war, politics, and ownership. Cheers broke out in the room. But Eli and Sira didn't cheer. They just looked at each other. They had finally earned what no war had ever given them. A place, a name, and peace. Back to the stars. Weeks later, Sanctuary was buzzing again. New ships arrived daily. Scientists, teachers, farmers, artists, engineers, families. Not just refugees now. Builders. Sira walked the main hallway and passed a wall filled with names. Every person who had ever called Sanctuary home had their name written there. She stopped and ran her hand across the wall. Her own name was there too. But under it, something new had been added by the children. Mother of Sanctuary. She laughed, just a little, then turned to Eli, who leaned against the rail nearby. You did this, she said. No, he replied. We did this. Final words, the legacy of the rejected. And across the galaxy, a story spread. A story of a human who helped one alien. And how that one act of kindness started a movement, built a home, and changed the stars. In the end, it wasn't weapons or war that made the difference. It was one simple truth. No one deserves to be forgotten. A new day at Sanctuary. The sky above Sanctuary was darker than usual. Not because of warships or storms, but because of something new. Peace. Real peace. No alarms. No enemy signals. No fear. Inside the station, children played in the hydro garden. Engineers laughed over broken coffee machines. Even the wounded walked with pride. They had defended their home, and they had won. But Sira knew it wasn't over. Winning a battle is not the same as winning a place in the galaxy. A station reborn. The station looked different now. New steel beams glowed with clean energy. Lights flickered with soft color. Symbols from different species were painted on the walls. Circles, stars, hands. Every room held stories. Every hallway, memories. The sign over the main entrance now read in simple words. Sanctuary, for all who were left behind. And beside it, painted by a child. Home. Eli Mercer, the heart of humanity. Eli stood in the hangar bay, covered in grease, fixing a broken landing rail. As always, quiet and focused. He had refused every title people tried to give him. Commander, founder, captain. He didn't want to be any of those. He just wanted people to feel safe. Sira approached him, holding a small datapad. Message from Earth, she said. Eli looked up. His face was unreadable, but his eyes narrowed, just slightly. Let me guess, he said. Now they care. A message from home. The screen lit up. An official Earth representative appeared, Ambassador Nira Voss. Her uniform was perfect, her voice smooth. To Eli Mercer and Sira of Kalari. The Council has reviewed recent events. We recognize your station's impact on border diplomacy, refugee stabilization, and cross-species aid. In light of this, Earth is prepared to open formal dialogue. Sira's eyes narrowed. Dialogue. They want to control the story, Eli said. Now that we've made headlines. Voss continued. We invite you to Terrasphere Station to speak before the Council. There will be full security and media access. Earth is listening. back where it all began. They'd arrived at Terrasphere 2 days later. Same cold metal walls, same sharp lights, same halls where they were once pushed away. But this time, they didn't walk in alone. Eli and Sira brought with them a small group, humans, aliens, children, survivors of Sanctuary, the ones who had built something out of nothing. And this time, the halls fell silent when they passed, not in fear, but in respect. The council stares again. The same council that once voted to exile Sira now looked at her with careful eyes. Not judgment, not hate, but uncertainty. They didn't know what to make of her anymore. Not a fugitive, not a villain, not even a victim, but a leader. Sira's speech, a voice for the voiceless. Sira stepped forward. She didn't wear armor. No weapons, just simple gray robes, stitched by hand by a refugee. She took a breath, then spoke. You once asked why I deserved to stay, why a Kalari widow should be protected. She looked at the crowd. I was no hero. I was lost, angry, hollow. But someone saw me, a human, a pilot with no army, no orders, no agenda. He just saw me. She turned to Eli. He said nothing, but his chest rose with pride. Asterisk, he gave me food, warmth, and one sentence I had never heard before. You're someone. That's enough. The room was silent. You call me a symbol now, but I am not special. I am just the proof of what happens when kindness is louder than fear. Small defense cannons, rebuilt from mining lasers, fired back. The beams were weak compared to Kalari weapons, but they hit. And that mattered. Down in the engineering bay, a group of Varick refugees powered up the emergency reactor. They shouted across the room in their native tongue, working together like they'd done it for years. An ex-human soldier named Lennox led the outer hallway guards, using old riot shields and stun guns. His voice was hoarse, but full of fire. They want to break through. Let him try. Boarding attempt. The fight gets personal. One of the Kalari ships launched a breach pod. It slammed into the side of Sanctuary with a loud crash. The doors hissed open, and armored Kalari soldiers rushed in. Sira ran down with Eli to the breach point. Others followed. No one hesitated. The hallway echoed with sounds of battle, screams, blaster fire, fists slamming against armor. Sira met the first Kalari soldier face to face. He recognized her. You, dishonored one, he hissed. You shame your kind by standing with humans. She stared him down. No, I honor myself by protecting those who care. She struck. The battle was fast, brutal, personal. Eli fought beside her, blocking shots, using trick grenades and trap wires. The defenders of Sanctuary, people once forgotten, fought like giants. They pushed the Kalari back. Reinforcements from the unexpected. As the main Kalari ship prepared for one final attack, a signal burst through space. Incoming ships, Eli shouted. Unmarked. Unknown. Everyone froze. More ships. But then, one by one, they appeared. Small ships, medium freighters, civilian cruisers, refugee ships, abandoned scouts, converted cargo vessels. Dozens of ships, all responding to Eli's message from weeks ago. People who had nowhere else to go. People who believed in Sanctuary. One of the ships opened comms. A deep voice spoke. You helped my sister. You gave her a place to live. Now we return the favor. Another voice followed. We are the forgotten, the unwanted. But together, we are not small. They all began to form a defensive wall around the station. The Kalari ships paused. They hadn't expected this. The turning point. Inside the Kalari command ship, an old general watched the screen. He frowned. We expected a base of cowards. Instead, they stand. His second-in-command hesitated. What now? The general stared for a long time. We were told to kill an outcast, but I see something else. He studied the growing fleet, dozens of different species all united. This is no longer a rebellion. This is a movement. Then he said something no one expected. Pull back. Victory, not through fire, but unity. The Kaluri ships turned. No warning, no message. They just left. Eli stared at the radar in shock. They're retreating. Sarah didn't move. Her voice was low. They were testing us, measuring us, seeing if we'd bend or break. Eli smiled. And we didn't. Cheers echoed through the station. Children ran through the halls, laughing. Old warriors hugged strangers. Engineers wept openly. For the first time, Sanctuary had won. Sarah, no longer rejected. Later, Sarah stood before the gathered people. Her armor was scratched, her hands bruised, but her spirit, unshakable. She looked out at them all. We were once alone. Now we are many. They called us broken, but we are more whole than ever before. People raised their fists, their hands, their voices. She looked at Eli, standing by her side. You gave me a reason to live, she said softly. Now we give that reason to others. And far away, a bigger storm brews. In the shadows of the galaxy, powerful empires whispered. Humanity has changed. One man turned exile into unity. The rejected are rising. The next battle would not be a surprise, but Sanctuary would be ready. He walked toward her, his step steady. You don't have to forget it. You just have to let go of the pain. Syra's breath hitched. She had spent so many years running from her pain, running from what had happened to her. How? She whispered. Eli stepped closer, offering her a simple, warm smile. By choosing to fight for something better. By building this. He waved his hand around the station, where people were still working, laughing, building together. We can't change the past, but we can choose what we do next. Sarah closed her eyes. She had never realized how much she needed to hear those words. The first test, a shadow in the night. The peace didn't last. 2 days later, a signal came in, a warning. They're coming, Eli said, staring at the message on the console. Kaluri bounty hunters. Syra's blood ran cold. She knew them. She knew how they worked. Cold, efficient, ruthless. Eli looked at her. We need to be ready. They won't stop. Not until you're dead. Syra's face was hard. They'll have to fight me first. Eli shook his head. We won't win if we face them head on. We need to defend Sanctuary, but we can't risk your life. Sarah clenched her fists. I'm not hiding. Eli's eyes softened. I know, but we're not fighting this alone. We've built something here. We're a family now. Sarah looked out at the station. The people here. They weren't soldiers. They were refugees, survivors. They were her new family. Then let's protect our home. Sanctuary stand. The next few hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Eli coordinated the defense systems. The engineers worked tirelessly to reinforce the outer hull. The people of Sanctuary, some of whom had never fired a weapon in their lives, began training. Sarah led the charge. She was not just the widow of a dead general now. She was the leader of this ragtag group. She was the one who inspired them. She was the one who showed them what it meant to fight for a future, not just survive the past. The bounty hunters came. 3 ships. Fast, aggressive. But they underestimated the people of Sanctuary. Eli activated the station's old weapon systems. They weren't the best, but they were enough. Sarah stood beside him, her eyes sharp, watching the incoming ships. They won't take us without a fight, she said. And fight they did. The calm before the storm. A deep silence settled over Sanctuary Station. The lights were dim. The engines were warm, and every hallway, every room, was filled with people waiting, watching, preparing. Syrah stood on the command deck, her eyes scanning the stars outside the station. Her jaw was tight. Her fists were steady. She wore armor now, not the cold armor of her past life as a Kalari captain, but something new, built from scrap metal, painted by children, touched by survivors. It wasn't just armor. It was hope. Beside her, Eli Mercer checked the defense systems again. He didn't speak much. His face was focused. But every now and then he glanced at Syrah, not with worry, with trust. They had been through too much to doubt each other now. Enemy ships incoming. A loud ping echoed through the station. The radar lit up in red. 3 massive ships, Kalari warships. They were bigger than any the station had seen. Black metal, sharp designs, the kind of ships that didn't talk first. Eli leaned forward. They're not bounty hunters. These are official military vessels. Syrah's face darkened. They've come to erase me, and everything we've built. Eli turned to her. Then we don't let them. The people prepared. Down in the lower levels, the people of Sanctuary were already moving. They had no military uniforms, no elite weapons, just patched gear, homemade shields, and determination. There were farmers, miners, old soldiers with bad legs, engineers with missing arms, a blind woman with a sharp mind, a child barely old enough to speak who helped load tools. They weren't warriors, but they had something stronger, a reason to fight. Syrah's speech, the spark that ignites. The loudspeakers clicked on. Syrah stepped up to the command console and spoke to the station. Her voice, steady and full, rang through every hallway. They say we are broken, that we are weak, that we are less. But look at us now. We've built something no empire ever could. A family out of strangers, peace from pain, strength from kindness. If they think they can scare us, they don't understand us. We're not just survivors anymore. We are protectors. And today, we fight not because we want war, but because we finally have something worth defending. Silence. Then, a cheer, loud, raw, unstoppable. The battle begins. The Kalari ships opened fire. Blinding white beams of energy slammed into the outer hull. The station shook. Lights flickered. Sparks rained from ceilings. Eli grabbed the rail. Shields are holding, for now. Return fire, Syrah ordered. The outpost, Sanctuary in the stars. The station known as Sanctuary was still far from perfect, but it was alive. Alive with hope. Alive with people. Syrah stood by the observation window and watched the stars twinkle in the distance. The station, an old mining outpost, had been abandoned for years. Its halls were quiet when they first arrived, empty and cold. But now, there were voices. The smell of food wafted through the air. Children laughed. People worked together, building, fixing, making it a home. The once dead station now had light, warmth, and purpose. It was small, yes, but it was theirs. Syrah had never known what it felt like to belong. She was born to fight, to lead. She was a warrior, trained to kill, to win. But here, she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. She was building. And for the first time, she could see a future. She wasn't alone anymore. Building a dream from broken pieces. Eli was busy in the lower levels of the station, working on some old communication tech. He was covered in grease, his hands blackened from hours of work, but his smile was wide. "It'll take time, but we'll get this place up and running," he said, lifting a rusted panel off the floor. "We just need to make sure everyone here has something to do, a place to belong." Syrah watched him from a distance. His hands were steady, his eyes focused. Eli Mercer was not just a pilot. He was a builder, a man who didn't sit still. He turned problems into solutions. A small group of people gathered around him, offering their help. Some were from broken colonies. Some were just wanderers, trying to find a new purpose in the galaxy. They were all misfits, rejected, but now they were united by one simple thing. They had a place to be. Eli looked up at Syrah, who had been watching him from the shadows. "What do you think? We're getting closer, aren't we?" Syrah smiled softly, then walked over to him. "Yes, it's working. But we need more supplies. More people." "Agreed. We'll get there," Eli said, wiping his hands on his jacket. "But we need to be careful. Word's going to get out. People, dangerous people, will be looking for us." Syrah nodded. She had heard the whispers from the galaxy. The Kalari Empire, the Galactic Accord, both had their eyes on them. The more Sanctuary grew, the more it became a target. The first visitors. A week after they began making improvements to the station, a ship arrived. It was small, older, and marked with the insignia of a refugee ship. It was a dull, faded color, but the signs of wear were clear. It had traveled far. Syrah and Eli stood on the observation deck as the ship docked. A few minutes later, the airlock opened. Out stepped a small family, a woman and 2 children. The woman had dark, tired eyes, but she looked relieved. The woman's voice was quiet but clear. "We got your message. We're not the only ones, are we?" Eli smiled, stepping forward to greet them. "No, you're not. Welcome home." Syrah stepped forward, too, feeling a strange warmth in her chest. "You're safe here. We'll help you." The woman nodded. "Thank you." Syrah watched the family walk toward the common area. People greeted them. Some brought food. Some offered blankets. It was a simple act, but it meant everything to the newcomers. Syrah turned to Eli. "This is what it's about. Giving people a chance." Eli nodded. "Exactly. A place to belong. Unwanted memories. The past still haunts." Later that night, as Syrah sat alone in the quiet of the observation deck, a dark thought clouded her mind. The Kalari Empire wasn't far away. They had eyes everywhere. Syrah knew that, and she knew they were watching. Her people had cast her aside because she had failed to die in battle. She had been a widow, weak, broken. But here, with Eli and these strangers, she had found strength again. She had become something she never thought she would be again. A leader. But the pain of the past still clung to her. The betrayal. The cold words of her people. She had been discarded, but she wasn't the only one. There were many like her. Many who had been rejected. Many who had been left behind. She closed her eyes, remembering the faces of the generals, the soldiers who had called her cursed. She heard their voices, the harsh words they had thrown at her. "We should have left you to die." Her fists clenched. Syrah stood up sharply, her eyes flashing with anger. She was about to leave the observation deck when a voice stopped her. "You can't run from your past forever, Syrah." She turned to see Eli standing in the doorway. His face was soft but firm. He understood the weight she carried. He didn't judge her for it. Bait and smoke. Minutes later, the Hope-Bringer entered a dense gas cloud. Purple and green mists swirled around them, making sensors go wild. Eli and Syrah launched the mimic spheres in all directions. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one blinked and vanished into the fog, pretending to be them. Eli cut all power and drifted silently, hidden inside a thick gas pocket. "Now we wait," he said, watching the scanner. Outside, one by one, bounty ships entered the cloud. Big ones, small ones, fast ones, ugly ones, all hunting the same prize. But they were fighting each other. Chaos in the fog. Suddenly, boom! A red flash lit up the cloud. One bounty ship fired at another. Another flash. Then 3 more. They were attacking each other. "They're confused," Syrah whispered. "Exactly," Eli said, grinning. "They're all greedy. No one wants to share the bounty." The scanner showed the chaos unfold. Syrah watched, eyes wide. "I never thought I'd see Kalari mercs fight a Varric hunter over me. Welcome to humanity's greatest weapon," Eli said. What's that? Making people fight themselves while we quietly walk out the back door. But one ship isn't fooled. Just as they prepared to slip away, a quiet alert appeared. New ship detected. Eli checked the data. No heat, no signal, no ID. That's not a bounty hunter, he said. That's a ghost ship. Syrah frowned. A what? Advanced stealth ship. Expensive. Rare. It doesn't want the bounty. It wants us silenced. The ghost ship moved through the mist. Calm, silent, deadly. Can we escape? Syrah asked. Eli didn't answer right away. He stared at the scanner. We can't outrun it. He stood. But I can stop it. Syrah grabbed his arm. You're not going out there. Eli looked at her. His eyes were calm, but there was steel in them. You didn't ask for this, Syrah. I brought it to you. I can't let you pay the price, and I won't let you die for me, she said, voice sharp. They stared at each other, old soldier and broken widow, quiet pilot and stubborn human. Then Syrah said, We do this together. Eli smiled. Okay, together. Ambush in the cloud. They powered up for a surprise burst. Eli flew low. Syrah aimed the decoy cannon. They couldn't match the ghost ship's strength, but they could blind it. Syrah fired a cluster of static bombs. The cloud exploded with white noise. The ghost ship's sensors went blind. Eli launched 2 heat flares and dove. The ghost ship fired blindly. Zizraikek. One laser missed them by inches. Eli twisted through the mist, heart pounding. Syrah, get ready. She opened the rear bay. A missile launcher rose from the back. She waited. Then, lock on. Now, Eli shouted. Syrah fired. Boom. The missile hit the ghost ship's engine. It didn't explode, but it stopped. Dead in space. The Hopebringer flew out of the cloud and into the stars. Behind them, the bounty hunters were still fighting. The ghost ship was dead in the mist, and for a moment, they were safe. Not just a rescue, a new beginning. Hours later, Eli and Syrah sat in the quiet ship. No alarms, no panic, just stars outside the window. You saved us, Syrah said softly. We saved each other, Eli replied. She looked at him. No one's ever fought for me before, not even my own people. He looked back at her. Maybe they didn't see you, but I do. Syrah leaned back. She looked tired, but something was different, not just in her eyes. In her soul. She wasn't floating through space anymore. She was flying again, with purpose. A message from Earth. Another battle begins. Then the console blinked. A message. Earth command. Eli opened it. Eli Mercer, you are ordered to return immediately. You have violated Galactic Accord regulations. If you do not return in 24 hours, your license will be revoked, your assets seized, and Earth will no longer protect you. Silence. Eli stared at it, then turned to Syrah. They're cutting me off. She swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Don't, he said gently. I knew this would happen. I chose it. Syrah looked down. And now what? Eli leaned back. Now we find a place they can't control. A place for people like you. Like us, Syrah corrected. He smiled. Yeah, like us. We can't outrun them forever. Nope, Eli said calmly. But we can outsmart them. He activated a cloaking drone and dropped it. The drone sent a fake signal. The bounty ships split up. One followed the fake. One kept chasing. Eli turned to Syrah. How good are you at flying? She gave a sharp nod. Excellent. Good. Take the stick. She jumped into action, hands steady now. She moved like a real pilot, like a warrior again. Together, they flew like one mind, dodging, diving, twisting through space. Finally, Eli pulled a hard turn near a gas cloud and switched all systems off. Silent mode. The last bounty ship flew past them, not seeing them hiding in the mist. Silence. They waited. Sarah looked at Eli. "Did we survive?" He grinned. "We did." She let out a breath. For the first time in years, she laughed. Just a small, tired laugh. But real. A new path. Hours later, they floated in deep space, systems cooling down. Sarah sat in the small kitchen of the Hopebringer, sipping a warm drink. Her eyes were softer now. She looked like someone beginning to believe again. Eli came in and sat across from her. "You're not just helping me," she said. "You're helping yourself too, aren't you?" He nodded. "I failed to save my brother," Eli said. "But maybe I can save someone now. Maybe that's enough." Sarah looked at him carefully. "Eli Mercer," she said slowly, "you are the strangest human I have ever met." He chuckled. "I hear that a lot." A light on the console blinked. A message from Earth. Eli opened it. "Return immediately, Eli Mercer. You are now considered an unauthorized protector of a Kalari fugitive. You have 48 hours before sanctions are applied." Sarah stood up. "I won't let you lose everything for me." Eli stared at the message, then shut it off. "Too late," he said. "I've already chosen." The ship Hopebringer drifted quietly in deep space. The engines were off. The lights were dim. The air was calm, but tense. Inside, two people sat in silence. Syra, the Kalari widow, once rejected by her own kind, now hunted across the stars. Eli Mercer, the human who helped her. A man who chose kindness over orders. A man who now had a price on his head too. They had escaped death. For now. But peace never lasts long when the galaxy wants you gone. An alert that changes everything. Beep, beep, beep. The calm was broken. Eli's console blinked red. A soft alarm rang through the cabin. "What is it?" Sarah asked, rising from her seat. Eli stared at the screen. His face changed. From focused to serious to angry. "Someone's tracking us," he said quietly. He zoomed in. "They're not just following us. They're broadcasting our location to every bounty ship in the sector." Syra's eyes narrowed. A bait signal. Eli nodded. "Yeah, someone wants us surrounded." Sarah stepped closer to the screen. 3 red dots. Then 5. Then 9. All heading toward them. "We can't outrun all of them," she said. "Not with this ship." Eli nodded slowly. Then said something unexpected. "We're not going to run." Eli's plan. A human trick. Sarah stared at him. "You're joking." Eli turned, already pulling open a wall panel. Inside were dozens of tools, wires, gadgets, and small devices, neatly organized. "You've fought in wars," he said. "You know how to attack. But humans, we're better at sneaking." Sarah tilted her head. Sneaking. Misdirection. Confusion. Distraction. Eli smiled. He handed her a small round device. It blinked softly. "What's this?" she asked. "A mimic sphere," Eli replied. "It copies our ship's heat and signal, makes it look like we're somewhere else." He grabbed 4 more. "We're going to scatter them into the gas field behind us. While the bounty hunters follow fake ghosts, we'll slip away under their noses." Sarah stared at him, then slowly smiled. "You humans are clever. That's why we're still alive." He winked. The inside of the Kalari ship was cold and dark. Wires hung from the ceiling. The air smelled old, like metal and dust and sadness. But the human Eli Mercer walked through it calmly. He had just given food to the alien widow Sarah. She hadn't spoken much after that. She had simply eaten, slowly and carefully, like someone who hadn't touched food in days, maybe weeks. Now she sat by a flickering console. Her back was straight, proud like a warrior's. but her hand shook when she thought no one was looking. Eli noticed. He didn't say anything about it. Instead, he knelt beside her control panel and began connecting tools from his ship's repair kit. Quiet beeps filled the silence as he worked. Sarah finally spoke, her voice like wind through broken glass. "I don't understand you." Eli didn't look up. "What part?" "All of it," she said. "You saw my ship. You scanned it. You know who I am." "I do," Eli nodded. "You're Sira of Kalari, former captain, widow of General Varric, marked by your people as cursed, exiled." "So, why are you here?" she asked. Her tone was flat, empty. Eli paused. He sat back on his heels and looked at her. Not with pity, not with fear, with truth. "Because I know what it's like to lose someone," he said quietly, "and to be told it was your fault." Sira blinked, surprised. Her species didn't believe in weakness. Showing pain was shameful. But Eli spoke so freely, so openly. He pointed to a metal chain around his neck. A small silver disc hung from it. "My brother Jonah. He died in the Taw Belt Wars," Eli said. "I was the one who convinced him to join the Space Corps, said it would give his life meaning." Sira leaned forward, slowly. "Did he die in battle?" Eli nodded. "Exploded, just like your mate." Silence fell again, but it was not a cold silence. It was soft, like the silence two people share after crying. Sarah looked at him for a long time. "You don't act like the others," she said finally. "Most humans avoid us. They think Kalari are too cruel, too proud, too alien." Eli gave a small smile. "I don't care what most people think." She looked away. Her long fingers tapped the console. A small alert flashed across the screen. "Incoming transmission. Classified channel." Eli leaned in. Sira clicked to open it. And there it was. A bounty. On her. And worse, on him. Right next to her profile, a fresh photo of Eli Mercer, marked, "Assisting an enemy of the Galactic Accord. Eliminate if necessary." Sira stood quickly, panic in her voice. "You have to leave. Now. Before they come." Eli didn't move. "I just got here." "They'll kill you," she hissed. "They'll kill us. You don't understand how bounty hunters work. They don't ask questions. They don't care who's guilty. They only want the reward." Eli slowly stood up too. "Then we better not be here when they arrive." He turned and walked back toward the docking hall. Sira followed. Back in the Hopebringer. Eli's ship was small, built for solo missions, but full of tech. It was warm, with yellow lighting and simple design. Everything had a purpose. He guided Sira to the co-pilot seat and sat at the control desk. "Strap in," he said, pressing buttons. "You're serious?" Sira asked. "Always," Eli replied. "You'd risk war with the Accord, just to help me." Eli didn't even look at her. "No, I'm not risking war. I'm risking myself. Big difference." "Why?" Her voice was a whisper now. Eli paused before replying. "Because someone has to care. If we stop caring about the ones everyone else throws away, what's the point of all this?" The ship engines came to life with a deep hum. Suddenly, "Warning. Tracking signal detected." Sira's eyes widened. "They've already found us." Eli pulled the ship into a quick dive. Stars blurred across the screen as the Hopebringer rushed into the darkness. Behind them, red lights blinked on the scanner. 3 ships. Fast. Armed. "Bounty ships," Eli said. "They're in range." He flicked a switch, engaging stealth mode. The ship vanished from radar for a moment. Boom. A shockwave hit them. Close. Sira held onto the chair as alarms blared. "Do we have weapons?" she shouted. "1," Eli said. "But it's not for attack." He fired a decoy flare. One of the bounty ships went after it. 2 remained. The Hopebringer twisted through an asteroid belt. Rocks smashed around them. Syra's heart pounded. A small, lonely ship floated near a cold, dark moon. The stars around it were silent. No movement, no life, just the broken ship and the woman inside it. Her name was Syra. She was not human. She was from the planet Kalari, a proud alien race known for war and power. Once, Syra was a respected soldier. Once she had a home, a mate, and a purpose. Now she had none. Syra sat alone in the command seat. Her eyes, once bright with fire, were dull and empty. Her long arms were wrapped around her thin body. Her skin, once a strong purple glow, had faded to gray. She had not spoken a word in weeks, maybe months. Time didn't matter anymore. 3 years ago, she lost her husband, General Varric, in the Orion Wars. He was killed in a surprise attack. His ship exploded before her eyes. She had screamed then. She had fought like fire. But when the war ended, there was no victory for her. No medals. No welcome home. Kalari law was cruel. Widows of dead warriors were seen as cursed. Bad luck, they said. They'd bring death. Her own people rejected her. Her commander erased her name from the records. Her home closed its gates. She begged for help. None came. So Syra left. Her ship was old. It broke often. Supplies were low. But she didn't care. She floated through space, moving from one sector to another. Other ships saw her. Some came close. But when they scanned her ship and saw her identity, they left. Just like that. No food, no power, no hope. Syra stared out the window of her ship. Her stomach hurt from hunger. Her lips were dry. Her heart felt dead. "I will not beg again," she whispered, voice thin and cracked. "Let space take me." She closed her eyes. Then, beep, beep, beep. A signal. A ship was nearby. She didn't move at first. She thought it was a dream. Or maybe another ship that would ignore her, like always. But the signal got louder. Then a voice. "This is Eli Mercer, captain of the human ship Hopebringer. I see your ship is damaged. Do you need help?" Syra opened her eyes slowly. Human. She reached for the panel and looked at the screen. A small human ship hovered near her. It was not a warship, just a small rescue vessel. The pilot's face was now on her screen. A human male. Short brown hair. Calm eyes. He didn't look afraid. He didn't look disgusted. He looked kind. Syra didn't answer. She just stared. Then the human said, "I see you. I'm not leaving you behind." Tears formed in Syra's eyes, but she quickly wiped them. No, she had cried enough. No more hope. No more lies. She pressed a button and said, weakly, "Go. I bring death." They all said so. But Eli didn't leave. Instead, his ship slowly docked with hers. Warning lights flashed in her control panel. Foreign ship connecting. "Don't do this," she said, her voice shaking. "Why would you risk yourself?" But it was too late. A moment later, the door opened. Cold air rushed in. Syra reached for a weapon, just in case. But Eli entered slowly, hands open, showing he meant no harm. He was wearing a simple spacesuit with a blue patch that said, Hopebringer. He looked around the broken ship, the dim lights, the empty food shelves. Then he looked at her, really looked at her. Syra stood there, weak, thin, proud even in pain. "You're starving," Eli said softly. "Let me help." He reached into his pack and pulled out a warm food capsule. He placed it on a nearby table and stepped back. Syra didn't move at first. Then, slowly, she picked it up and ate. Warm, real food, she cried. Eli sat on the floor, letting her eat in silence. After a while, she asked, "You don't fear me?" Eli shook his head. "Why should I? You're not a monster. You're just someone who was left behind." That night, Syra slept for the first time in weeks. Real sleep. No nightmares. But peace would not last long. Far away, on a bounty board, a red alert lit up. Subject: Sira of Kalari, location identified. Eliminate at once. A price was set on her head. And now, because he helped her, Eli Mercer was marked too. They didn't know it yet. But the galaxy was watching. And soon, everything would change.